Hello, everybody, and welcome back for episode 6 of Graham's Haunted Life. Well, I've got to start this episode with a massive thank you. I've got a little handful of new subscribers, and the last episode got a lot more views than the first 4 had, so hopefully that's a trend that's going to continue. I'm over the moon. So to all of those people who've subscribed over the last week, thank you so much. And to everybody who listened to the last episode or any of the other episodes, thank you so much. It means a lot. So just over a week ago now, me and my wife went to Sheffield for HorrorCon, and it was my first ever convention of any kind. My wife has been to some kind of comic convention thing in the past. It was the first time I've ever been to one of these things, and there were things that I liked about it and things that I disliked about it. There were more things that I liked than disliked, but I'll discuss all of that. The main thing that I didn't like was how crowded it was, and I'm not that great in a crowded space. But there were some really cool celebrity guests there, and there were some people there who really went to the nth degree with their costumes. And the dressing up thing is not my cup of tea unless it's Halloween and I'm going to a Halloween party. The dressing up thing's not for me, but I can absolutely appreciate when other people do that stuff and do it really well. And there were some people there who had absolute 10 out of 10 costumes. Unbelievable. Now, the main reason we went for this HorrorCon was Steve Pemberton and Reece Shearsmith were going to be there. And my wife absolutely loves Inside Number 9, which I like it as well. But for me, my connection to Steve Pemberton and Reece Shearsmith is The League of Gentlemen. That show started just as I was getting into secondary school, and me and my friend, it's to this day one of our favourite shows ever, and my wife likes it as well. So we've got this we're both fans of these two guys and everyone else who was involved, but we're fans from two different sort of perspectives. We saw the Inside Number 9 live show a year ago, or thereabouts, in London, and that was probably the best stage show that I've ever seen in my life. It was so well done and so clever. So yeah, I mean, we got to meet those two guys, one on the Saturday and one on the Sunday, and my wife wanted photographs with them, and she was absolutely over the moon with that. And Reece Shearsmith, when we spoke to him, we mentioned that we both knew that we were made for each other when we both quoted the famous Reece Shearsmith line from the sitcom Spaced. The line where he says, "Oh yeah, I hadn't thought of that," and it's such a ridiculous little line. And he had such a little part in that sitcom, but he came up with one of the most memorable lines for it. But yeah, we knew we were meant to be together when we both quoted that line. Me and my friend spent years at school quoting that, and we worked together for a while and we used to quote that all day long. And then when me and Laura got together and we both started quoting that, it was like, yep, this is the right place to be. Now, we also got to meet Brad Savage, who played Danny Glick in the 1979 two-part miniseries of Salem's Lot, which was directed by the absolute legend Tobe Hooper. But he was a really nice guy. We spoke to him about how much he terrified us as kids, and he commented on the atmosphere of shooting certain scenes, like the scene where he gets put he's in his coffin and he's about to get buried, and then the grave digger jumps down and opens the coffin. He spoke about the moment they put him in the coffin and closed the lid, being really scary since he was like 13 at the time. Now, that moment where he scratches at the window, he was talking about how cool that was, and how at the time of filming it, he didn't know that there was going to be this sound effect along with the like scratching. So on watching it back, it affected him as if he were just any other person watching the film for the first time, even though he was there in it. Now, that scene where he does pop up out of his coffin at the end of the first part is the scene that got me the most, because I was 10 years old when I watched that film and I was absolutely terrified. But he was a really nice fella, and he spent maybe 10 minutes having a little chat with us. He was a nice man. I was really excited because I got to meet Ian Ogilvy, who starred in The Witchfinder General alongside Vincent Price. And The Witchfinder General has been one of my favourite films for years. Now, I don't ever really get like starstruck by anybody famous, but I must admit it did feel like a little bit of an honour getting to meet Ian Ogilvy. There was just a kind of aura coming off him, and I'm sure he's in his 80s now, but he still looked. He was like dressed up in this really nice suit, and he just looked so cool. And I probably sounded like an idiot telling him that I loved folk horror, and he probably doesn't ever even comprehend that as a thing. He was just in this film all them years ago, and folk horror wasn't a term that was being thrown around then. It's come since. But yeah, getting to meet Ian Ogilvy was really, really cool. Now, there was an author who had a stand in one of the corridors. He had a stand and he was selling his own books, and so we went to speak to him because my wife has just sort of finished writing her first book, and she's finished editing it as well, and she's in that process of trying to get it out to like literary agents to maybe get some representation. But she spoke to this guy, his name was Stacey Digton, and I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that right. And he self-publishes, so he gave a lot of advice and a lot of what he experienced when he went the traditional publishing route and what he experiences now that he self-publishes. So it was quite nice for my wife to get that little bit of to dig up a little bit of knowledge out of somebody who's kind of been there and done it. And we each bought books. I bought a book called Black Heart of the Raven that sounds a little bit like a detective kind of caper type of thing. And I'm going to get round to reading it as soon as I've finished reading my current book. But it looks really cool. It's got a really nice bit of artwork on the cover with a raven pecking at a blackened heart held in somebody's hands. It's a really nice cover painting. So I'll be reading that book at some point, and then I'm going to find the guy on Instagram and I'm going to send him a message and tell him what I think of it. It was really nice to talk to him. Now, I said there were things that I liked and things that I disliked about this convention. And I must admit, I'm probably never going to go to one again, just because I found the crowds a bit too much. But one of the main things I really liked about this convention was the building that held it. As I say, we were down in Sheffield, known as Steel City, and the building is a former steelworks, and it was absolutely huge. I believe that it was one of the biggest in Europe or something. And a huge part of the building still has all of the old gear and machinery left in place. And they had this gantry where you were up a height and you could walk along and look at all this old gear, but it was all darkened and lit here and there by little pools of colourful light. And because of the horror convention, I'm assuming because of that, they had sort of skeletons sitting at pieces of machinery and stuff, and skeletons up in little control booths high above everything else, and it was really cool. That was probably my favourite part of the whole thing, because as we walked down there was nobody else around us. We were just alone for a little bit. Now, I'm not that great with crowds, and neither is my wife, So being in the main hall where all of the vendors were was really overwhelming at times. But I have to say there were some amazing vendors who were selling their own sort of crafts. So Laura had bought a nice ornament from somebody. She bought a really nice T-shirt for herself from somebody else. Uh, it was a really good event, and as I say, the good parts of it do far outweigh the negative parts of it. Just before we left on the Sunday, we saw a screening of 3 short horror films, which were really cool. And I really love the short horror film format. I love short films in general, but especially short horror. And I would love one day to make one of my own. I mean, it would be the roughest thing ever, but I would love to make a little short horror film. In fact, I probably will, because these 3 films inspired me a little bit. Now, the first was a short story called God Forbid, and it seemed to me that it was about guilt and shame, and it tackled some tricky topics and emotions really well, using a classic ghost story format as a vehicle for it. Really enjoyed that one. It was about 5 minutes long, maybe a little bit longer. Now, the middle film was a cool little classic vampire story, and unfortunately I can't remember the title of it, but I do remember it was enjoyable, while sticking very strictly to the usual tropes of a little vampire story. The next one was another vampire story called Bloodsuckers, and I felt it was taking a look at like mental health in an interesting way, with the main character becoming a little bit divorced from reality and having delusions of grandeur. However, the monsters that she seemed to be believing in, that caused everybody to think she was crazy, turned out to be real, but not in the way that she had had going on in her head. But it was a really interesting film, and whoever made that film may not have been trying to tackle topics of mental health and stuff, but that's just what I took from it. I thought it was really cool. That was probably one of the highlights of the week as well. Another highlight of the weekend was the place we stayed in Sheffield. Now, we didn't go for the usual travel lodge or Premier Inn this time. We stayed in a room above an old pub called the Old Crow. We stayed in a room called the Magpie Room, which is cool, and all of the rooms had names. They had the Raven Room, they had the Crow Room, they had the Rook Room, and we stayed in the Magpie Room. Now, magpie, the image of the magpie is something that comes up throughout the theme of the book my wife has just written. So it was really cool that when we got there, they gave us the key, told us where to find the room, and when we got there was a sign on the door saying the Magpie Room. It was like, oh, that's nice, that's cool. Now, downstairs in the bar, it was really cool in there. We turned up to the place just before it was opening, and I must admit, when I first saw the outside of this pub, I thought, I'm not sure if this is going to be a nice place to stay. It seems like it might be a bit of a sort of rough local kind of pub. But then we heard them unlock the door, and we went in and spoke to the guy, and it looked like it had a bit of a sort of rock bar kind of vibe, and all of the beers on tap were like craft beers and stuff. And I was like, oh, okay, no, this is my kind of place. And we had a pint there before we put our stuff in the room, and it was a really cool pub and a nice little hotel room. Now, Sheffield itself, we didn't explore too much, but we did have a little wander around on the Saturday night, and we had some food. I would like to go back to Sheffield and see more of it. I really like the trams. Like, we got around on the trams. We got from the centre of Sheffield to the place where the convention was with the tram, and it was really cool. I'd like to go back and spend more time actually exploring Sheffield, the city centre, because I've never been other than that last weekend, and it was a really cool weekend. Okay, let's get on to a bit of music. We'll talk about the record of the week. This week I've been playing Evisceration Plague by Cannibal Corpse. It came out in 2009, and I went out to buy it as soon as it came out. I think it's my favourite Cannibal Corpse album, and some might find that a bit controversial, but I love everything about it, from the crushing riffs and the punishing vocals to the artwork. And the artwork for me, it broke the norm for Cannibal Corpse artwork. Now, it's a bit darker than the normal Cannibal Corpse album cover. They're generally very colourful and very, over the top gory. And this album, it's so much more subtle. It shows a group of zombie-like creatures emerging from a very dark background, and you can see two lead sort of figures, and then a group of far less easy to see characters behind those guys. Now the main character on the cover that's as close to you as any of them get has this horrid looking face, these really wide eyes, and its lips are bared right back, showing a mouthful of horrible teeth. And the version of the album I have, those eyes glow in the dark. It's really cool. So rather than being a really fun and gory painting, I actually find it really subtly creepy and so much different from anything else that they've done. Standout tracks for me are the obvious title track, Evisceration Plague. Priest of Sodom is a brilliant track, and probably my favourite on the album, A Cauldron of Hate. The intro riff to A Cauldron of Hate is just nasty. It's just like you're being beat over the head with an iron bar, and then the vocals come in and punish you even further. It's a great album. I've played it all week long, and I still love it now as much as I did in 2009 when it came out. So we're coming towards the end of this week's episode, but I do want to talk a little bit more about my music. Now I'm forever being sidetracked and getting myself on little musical side quests. So I've been putting together like a 15-minute monster of a track that's kind of made up very subtly of field recordings and little bits of synth and a lot of vocals, and it's got this really kind of sci-fi theme. So I'm going to finish recording that during the next week to come, but like I've done in the past, I've put bits of my music on the end of videos. 15 minutes is a bit too long to put on the end of an episode. So when I do have it finished and I have it up online, I will post links and I will tell you where to find it. Now, I am going to put another piece of music on the end of this, but a much shorter one. I've been digging up a couple of my old little ambient tracks, so I'm going to play a little track that I've got called Adrift on the Wind, and it's only 2 and a bit minutes, but that's going to be on the end of this episode. And as you'll see while you're listening to this, I've got a new graphic up there. Now before now, I picked a different picture each week and edited it up, but I feel like I'm going to stick with this new one. It puts a face to the voice. And in time, I want to build myself a backdrop. Now, I don't know when this will be. I don't know how soon this will be, but I want to build a backdrop so that I can start filming the episodes and we can have an audio version and a visual version. But for now, for the foreseeable, it's going to be audio only. But as I said, this new graphic, maybe I'll edit the colour of it here and there as episodes go on. But it'll be this graphic giving the listeners a picture of me so that you've got a face to put to the voice. So as I said, I'm going to play a piece of my music to end the episode. So again, thank you so much for everybody who listened to the last episode and for everybody who subscribed in the last week. It's much appreciated. And without further ado, let's play the track by my musical project Dark Life, entitled Adrift on the Wind. I'll see you back here next week.